And the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
My name is Nicola Charles and I'm a proud anti-vaxxer from Victoria, Australia. Now, I've been worried about vaccines for a long time, but it's not just those clear substances in vials that get injected into people's arms that I'm concerned about. It's vaccines being dropped from the sky as aerosols and vaccines that are added to liquids that we can drink. In 2013, the Australian government administered 1,000 cholera vaccines to recipients in a drink. Who is delivering your water every day, and what is the quality of that water? They've already told us that it contains fluoride, a neurotoxin. 3 years ago, I stopped drinking tap water and recently went onto the Zeta Potential program. This adds alkalinity to the blood and also increases your electrolytes. Something is giving people mass cancers around the world, and jumping onto Zeta Potential for me has been one way for me to alleviate my fears. If you want to jump on the knowledge train with regard to water, click on the link below this show.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Australian Radio Show. Would you believe it, 14th of May, it is Wednesday and it's episode 90. So for all the cricket fans out there, we have hit the nervous 90s. That means we're only a 4 and a 6 away from our century. That is enough cricket for today. But I tell you what, I'm pretty excited we have got this far in a very short period of time in a brand new concept that is certainly changing the way that people in the independent media space are noticing, and our audience says we love the show because my name is Jason. My news partner, as you can see right there, is Nicola, and we don't agree on everything, and we come from it from two very different positions, but we know one thing is for sure: we have to fight our way out against the tyranny of globalism, of dependence on government for everything that we've ever believed in. And that is why we get up every day and put together a show that hopefully will be able to share the news of the day, analyse it and create a discussion, and also a code of conduct in new media that says that we are not going to be taken out by those tyrants who think that they control the narrative no more. We fight on. Nicola, happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Happy Wednesday, Jason. It's funny that we hit the nervous 90s because I got a bit nervous yesterday. I started to question everything and if there was any value in me even being a social and political commentator in Australia. And I had a massive wobble. You know about it. You were the first person I told, obviously, and told our investors and friends and a lot of people involved in this show. And I got some amazing messages, and I also got amazing messages from people who didn't know that I was having a wobble yesterday. But you know, when that happens, when that happens to you, it's almost like the universe knows, and all of these people contact you and say, you know, hold the line, keep going, and you're like, they don't even know what's going on. It's so strange how it happens, because you know, everyone watching this, you guys watching this, you are watching this for free. You know, that's just the way it works. And I saw Rita Panahay say something on Sky News the other day, and she said, well, why would anyone do it if they weren't getting paid? And I was like, well, you know, when you're on the right of things, you sort of have to do that. And I got these amazing messages. One of the great messages was from Graham Hoodie, and I know lots of people who watch this show also watch Hoodie. So I haven't messaged you back yet, Graham, but I'm going to as soon as we finish recording on this show. And he actually was just so beautiful. It was a massive long text message, and you know, it was pretty wonderful. And people said some great things, and I wasn't fishing for people to say great things. I was having a wobble about what we do because I was so worried about the fact that Australians don't seem to want to understand or listen that well. And I kept thinking of that great quote that, you know, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And I do think people are predominantly good, not all, but essentially I feel like Australians are doing nothing, and it frightens me. So one of the messages I got of encouragement and praise for you and I, Jason, and he told me, and I know for a fact these people listen all the way through the show. It's not one of the 2 minute watchers, because he was talking about he lives in the Hunter Valley near you. And he said every time Jason references the Hunter Valley, I'm, yeah, mate, yeah, mate. But originally he's from the UK. Anyway, he is a movie insider, and he told me some interesting information.
Mhm.
So he's going to bring information to me as much as he can, but there is a massive Hollywood film that has been slated to film in Sydney, and it's been delayed twice. And when a big movie like that gets delayed twice at the last minute, it is at enormous expense. I once
Mm.
had a drinks commercial for Coca-Cola, rained off and suspended for 6 weeks, and I was paid my daily rate, which I won't brag, it was quite large as a model, every single day for 6 weeks while doing nothing, because you're on pause, you're on wait,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Anyway, this massive Hollywood movie has been delayed twice because the lead actor, the number one movie star, American, knows he's on the Epstein client list.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there's multiple aspects to that. So we're told that there's no list. We're told that Pam Bondi's sitting on it. We're told that nothing's really going on. And then Pam Bondi comes out and says, well, no, there's tens of thousands of videos that we need to go through. And if you've got a Hollywood superstar who obviously the film company needs to pay a massive insurance policy, etc., and it's been delayed,
Yeah.
then there is a lot more going on behind the scenes. That is, well, that's breaking news. That we might as well cut that little 1 minute segment out and throw that one up there and see what happens. Goodness me, what a story.
Because you're right, it is about the insurance, because I faced that myself. Again,
Yeah.
to reference, I don't want to reference any unhealthy fizzy drinks companies. Yeah, this was when I was asleep. But I remember I was actually told in the run up to me filming that commercial that my teeth had been insured by them for £250,000 in the UK,
Wow.
in case in the run up to the ad, because what you have to do is you have to put people with nice teeth in fizzy drinks commercials, because fizzy drinks are not good for your teeth. So in the run up to it, in the couple of months while they cast me and then set up, my teeth were insured for $250,000 in case someone punched my lights out or I had a car accident or something. And I was like, you're kidding. And they were like, no, no, it's all about the teeth. So with this movie, you are absolutely correct. What they don't want to happen, because actors, big movie stars, they get 50% of their fee up front and then 50% on wrap. So if 50% of a Hollywood movie star's fee is 5 million or 10 million, it can be huge. And then halfway through, they're arrested and cannot complete filming. And even if they did, no one would want to watch said film because, well, you're on the Epstein client list. So this is actually playing havoc with Hollywood. And I actually do ask myself if this is why Trump is saying things about, fixing Hollywood, because to fix it, you would first need to remove those sorts of people, right?
Absolutely. So he brings up the idea of tariff because that's the narrative of the day. So he's going to tariff foreign films coming into the United States to make ticket prices effectively double, is the way that I read it, but it could well be other ways of doing that. But why would, I mean, Americans watch American films. I can't imagine that the foreign film industry in the United States is threatening Hollywood. It was more to me a throwaway line. So you're right. If you read between the lines, there's something else going on there.
There
Now,
is.
now, we've got a lot of news to talk about on this subject today, and I know that this is a very sensitive subject. I know that what Lionel Nation, when I interviewed him on the 51st State, gave me some very sage advice on what you can say and what you can't say and how the algorithm works against you. But we're going to plough through on what is mainstream news, some of which isn't, that Nicola's just given us, obviously. But there's a lot of mainstream news on the subject. So my gut feeling that I obviously have to rely on for almost everything, it's all about intuition, really, is that the Diddy trial is the great setup for what will then come of the Epstein trial. And of course, this isn't just what's going on. There's other news today about a French actor that we'll bring out shortly, and it continues. Now, there's another story, of course, that I'm going to bring up a little bit later. A fellow called, I'm just going to call his name up here so I don't get it wrong, because Tim Tebow. Was on the Sean Ryan podcast, and this is going to be in the bulletin. But he showed him a document, a map of the United States that showed lots of red ink on it that showed 111,000 IP addresses in the United States that downloaded child material in just the last 30 days.
Oh, God.
111,000. And so, Tim, I'm going to read part of that into the news. There's a couple of paragraphs there to get out there, but so it's a scourge. It is a sickness. The problem is if there is an unwillingness in government, then government either are in on it or they're in denial, and we all know how we feel about that.
It's because they know people. We know they know people. There's been a was it a royal commission into this? And the names have been redacted of a former Australian PM and politicians and stuff that were involved in this. And it's funny because it's the kind of subject that you think, it is very unsavory and it's difficult to talk about and difficult to think about. But it affects a lot more people than you think. I mean, just recently, a primary school down the road from me had a primary school teacher, a male, arrested in front of the kids in the middle of the day because they found, again, online on his computer, pornographic material that related to children of that age group, right? And it was a primary school. Now, I've spoken about this before on my podcast, but I too was affected by this. I was 5 years old living in the English countryside, and we had a neighbor who had a daughter my age, and I used to have play dates with her. And when I was 5 and I was barely conscious, I've always been a late developer. I was pretty much a baby. My mum would deliver me to the house for a play date next door, and then I'd hang out with my friend, and then she'd go out and do shopping. And I remember this one day she was going out for a new vacuum cleaner because our vacuum cleaner had packed up. So I imagined she was going to be longer than usual because, she was going to choose a nice new vacuum cleaner. And this 40-something-year-old father of my friend, who'd always been the kind of guy that waved over the fence and seemed like a nice human being. They all do, these predators. I was in the living room. I can't go into too much detail, but I was in the living room playing with my friend and her brother, who was a bit older. And then he said something to them very quickly that I didn't understand. And they left the room, and he pushed a couch up against the door and threw me to the ground and assaulted me. And just prior to that, he'd given us these Chupa Chup lollipops, the round on the stick. And he opened my mouth and he jammed the Chupa Chup into my windpipe so I couldn't scream. So I knew in that split second, even as sort of a baby, age 5, that this was someone who knew what they were doing. Oh, and I can tell you now that it is all about power and about destroying innocence, because he certainly did destroy my innocence on that day. And I had that experience that you hear about with people when they have a near-death experience. So I guess my body and my mind, my soul felt that I was going to die because I sort of came out of my body, and I was actually on the roof looking down at the whole thing. And I could barely see myself because he was so large over me. And the next conscious thought I had was the click of his garden gate as I was leaving. I was, pushed out, and I heard the click of his gate catch, and it woke me, and I felt like my soul went back into my body. And I was just numb. I couldn't feel pain. I didn't have memories at that point. They came later on. They talk about this, repressed memory stuff. And I do remember he said to me as he pushed me down the garden path, if you say anything, basically, I'll kill your dad. And he knew I loved my dad. And so when you're little, you believe that kind of thing.
Of
He
course.
terrorized me, completely terrorized me. And I didn't tell anyone until I told my mom when I was 21 years old. And sadly, her reaction wasn't what I wanted. She said, "Oh, well, it doesn't matter. He's dead now. He died of a stroke." And I said, "Well, it does still matter, you know." So when you hear about these things like Epstein and these people have been doing this downloading and stuff, you don't actually know that all of the people that say hi to you in the morning, going to work, and you see them at weekends mowing their lawn, you don't know if these people are safe. And I know there's a lot of laws where they've created lists, so you're supposed to know where people are. But they're the people who've been found out and convicted and gone on a list. I hazard a guess that more than 50% of child predators have not ever been found out. And when you've got governments shielding their names, they never will be. And so you don't know if you're safe. You don't know if your kids are safe. I wrote a book about it called Click Monkey, about men with porn addictions and, you know, how it leads to child abuse and stuff like that, because children can't speak out. So when you hear about this Epstein stuff and you think it's sort of gossipy and tabloid and commercial and, you know, great, we get to find out who the weirdos are. Oh, I would ask that you always remember there's little children and young women as well, teenage girls, obviously, with Epstein. But I don't know about you. When I was 16 or 17 and I have a 17-year-old daughter, you are certainly not old enough to deal with an attack. So this stuff is serious, and when the truth does come out, I would implore you to share it.
Just to take a breath just for a moment, Nicola, and just to acknowledge the all the cliches of being so courageous to be able to share that publicly, and obviously with me here as we record today, and just to say to you how sorry I am that you would ever have to go through that, and the fact that that you share that partly on me encouraging you to be able to do this as part of our service to community, and particularly yours, only ours in as far as we work together on this show. And I'm dreadfully sorry that this would happen to you, as I am to any child or human being that would ever have to go through it. And it is just rest assured that this is the reason why I have dedicated, since first discovering in 2016, I told you before the show, when I discovered on the chans on a particular chat by a character called FBI Anon, who pointed to the fact that the US government was involved with human trafficking, only to fast forward to only a month ago, RFK Jr. coming out and saying that the HHS was involved in human trafficking. That's how far we have come in all of this. I have interviewed Liz Croken, who broke the Pizzagate story. I have interviewed Fiona Barnett many times, and you can find those interviews on Rumble. She was actually on TNT Radio with me once or twice. And I also am sitting on an interview that I have yet to release that I recorded 3 years ago with Fiona Barnett, with Rachel Vaughan, and with Dale Holmes. So any of you who are listening, watching right now, who know those three people, this is the hottest interview that I've ever done. I'm a bit disappointed with my presentation in that particular, but that's irrelevant because we've got a four-way sort of Zoom call going on there. But it is there. It is set to be released at some stage in the future, probably when we see someone in handcuffs, so that we know that we can then advance the cause. We don't need more information circling about to be censored. When this thing goes mainstream, and we're very, very close now, this has to be the year that it's going to happen, perhaps even within months. But the Diddy trial is showing us horrendous things that are in the mainstream. We just learnt today in the New York courtroom that his children had to walk out. They just got up and walked out when there was testimony given about certain situations. So they're not even going to be able to tolerate this. And it is just vile and disgusting. And look, there is a slippery slope, but there is also a point of no return. There is a red line that you do not cross. And people that think that it's okay to do that, and people that think that it's okay to harm innocent people, defenseless people, you're the sick fucks, and I don't say that lightly, that deserve everything that is coming to you. And you can fight as hard as you can, but you're going to lose this one. And that is not a threat. That is a promise that what is coming, because we've now reached, we're virtually at critical mass now. And Diddy, you're the one that's going to be opening it up. And we've got a lot more to talk about today, Nicola.
Well, the problem with abused children that they have as well is that we grow up. I'm sure they prefer we didn't, but we do grow up, and you become an adult,
Mm.
and you think, how in an adult world are these people not immediately dealt with? Because you've either been abused or you
Yep.
become an adult, and you have children, and it goes on. And I think the problem is that people do think that this is just sort of a tabloid sensational thing, but there are children involved here. And the really terrible thing as well is, I don't consider myself a victim. I went and got therapy later on for this. And brilliant person said, you either, and I talked about it too, actually. So before my mom, I did speak to a school counselor about this, and it was at the time my parents were getting divorced, so I think that was the trigger. I was on shaky ground. And he said, in life, you're either a victim or a survivor. There's two doorways, there's two keys, there's a key in both locks. And you're either going to walk through that door that says victim and say that, my life didn't work out because I'm a victim and I got abused and this, that, and the other. Or you go through the key that says survivor and you say that I achieved good things and I made a good life for myself, despite the fact that this awful predator ended my childhood, essentially. And there are lots of children out there who don't make it. They didn't make it out, and that it was persistent. Mine was a one-off, and I'm blessed for that. I consider myself blessed. For some children, even from parents, it's systematic, it's constant, it's non-stop. It's not about one haunting episode that colors the rest of your life. It becomes your life. And then some of them don't speak, so they don't have voices. They're gone. So we're the adults now, and we have a responsibility. And it's like everything else that we talk about, Jason. Everything else that we talk about, we have a responsibility. And we live in a world where there are adults, I believe, like us, who feel the weight of that responsibility on all fronts, whether it's healthcare and law and governance. And there are grown-ups, adults, who don't feel any weight of responsibility about being a decent person or having integrity or speaking the truth. And unfortunately, most of the people who are in positions of authority in our countries don't believe that kind of thing is important. And this is not the same as adult stuff. This is not the same as people having affairs or being found out to be a bit flirty and a bit handsy. I know that's not ideal. I've also experienced that in the television industry. It's different when it's a child. So I appreciate everything you've done, Jason. I look forward to you releasing that. I know it's going to be difficult to watch. It was probably difficult for those people to film and talk about. Dale Holmes is all over this, so I expect that to be great. But this can feel like tabloid gossip and excitement also, almost. And you need to realize that there's children. They might be grown up now, but there is still children out there going through this. You can't imagine it. If you haven't been abused, you can't imagine it. So it doesn't seem real to you, but it is real for some children. So I also wanted to talk today. I'm going to move on so I don't get upset.
I just want to quickly make one point. Sorry, Nicola. Part of the reason that my wife and I got into counselling was to do with the COVID period and the various different grief and suicide and all the rest of it. We've talked about that in the past. But we named our business Higher Purpose Counselling because we thought that it was more than just getting from below zero back to zero and starting again. Because if you think of it, the other side of it is to go into what you would call life coaching. So it's one thing to get back to a level playing field, but then what do you do with that now that you're back? Where I wanted to go with it was simply to acknowledge that you're right. You're either a victim or a survivor. Well, we added one more term to that, and our term was that not only do you become a survivor, but you become a thriver. In other words, you're able to now not let, or you recover, you heal, but you don't let it harm the rest of your life. How dare these bastards harm you that the best you're ever going to be as a survivor?
Yeah.
I call bullshit on that. I say, no, you can go a lot further than that and you thrive. And so I would, by looking at you, knowing you, and as we are friends and colleagues, I would say you're much more than a survivor. You are the definition of thriver.
Oh, thanks. And when I had children of my own, I realized how important my role was.
Yes.
God
Yep.
help anyone who even looked at my girls sideways. So,
You
I mean,
better
you may
bloody believe
criticize
it.
helicopter parents, but I made sure there was no
Yeah.
5 minutes late at the school gate. It was
No
all
way.
on point. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about, which also upsets me, and I actually haven't talked about this on a podcast or this news show ever before, was the flat out cold blooded murder of Ashley Babbitt on that January the 6th. Now,
Mm.
I read a story this morning that is just guiling. I can't believe it. So, the family of Ashley Babbitt have gone after the government for damages because of her cold blooded murder. And the damages are reported to estimated to be in the region of about 30 million, I don't think the amount of the damages is important. But the family had a lawyer after this happened, and the lawyer dumped the family in 2022 after 2 years' work. And that's actually really distressing during a legal case to have your representation dump you. But now that lawyer that dumped Ashley Babbitt's family in 2022, he is trying to force the judge in the ongoing case to give the lawyer who dumped their client 40% of their settlement. I mean, it's absolutely shameful and disgraceful. Not asking for fees on the 2 years' work. They want 40% of what Ashley Babbitt's family gets. I mean, this whole thing is turning into a Greek tragedy for this family, and my heart goes out to them. And I don't like anything to do with lawyers and barristers anyway. You do pretty well. You don't need to do this to people. It's just appalling, Jason. What's going on?
It's the typical lawyer jokes that we used to hear. I remember the 90s. It was all lawyer jokes, and that's the perfect example, isn't it? I'll remember one of them from a film I saw, and it was, what is the difference between a lawyer and a catfish? One is a scum-sucking bottom dweller, and the other one's a fish. And and that's a perfect example of what you're dealing. Isn't it just disgraceful to think that you were just going to stand over the victim's family like that and demand that you are rewarded for something that you walked away from? It's just, but that's,
Even if it was 5%, it would be like, it would sound reasonable, but
yeah,
40% is just
40%. Yeah,
horrible.
yeah,
Greed.
yeah, yeah, yep. Without victims, you don't get paid, but without lawyers, you can't get there. But there are more lawyers, I guess, now that would want to take that on, and no one wants to be the victim. So, yeah, look, it's
Read it.
extraordinary.
Go and read it. It's on Blaze Media. And also, I'm very upset because someone known to us who doesn't believe in the legitimate peer-reviewed findings about what's gone on during this engineered pandemic went at 8 o'clock this morning and got yet another COVID booster shot in Melbourne, and then went to work. And they gave this person a badge. It's a pink badge. They're all getting a pink badge now. It's on my ex account. The photo of it. He sent it to me. That says, "Arm yourself with a COVID booster." And it's this, crappy little pink badge, probably made in China, in a plastic wrapper, by the way. Considering plastic straws are forbidden, couldn't you just hand the badge? Why does it have to come in a, you can see it's in a plastic wrapper. And my heart just breaks. My heart just breaks for these people, Jason.
It's astonishing, isn't it? I watched mainstream breakfast telly the other day, and some doctors getting on and pitching the flu vaccine and demanding that he knows because he reads and he's got better access to more information. And I'm
Hmm.
like, do you really read it, mate? Because if you read what we have read, you might
Yeah.
have a different opinion.
Yeah.
I've asked many doctors, and when I was on TNT interviewing hundreds of doctors over a couple of years, and even my own GP at the time, I would compare notes. And I remember back in early COVID, I asked her about the jab, and she said, "Oh, I won't be taking it." And it was all telehealth at the time. And I remember ringing her back a month or two later, and then she asked me if I wanted to take the jab. I said, "You told me that you weren't taking it. Why would I?" And she said, "Oh no, I've changed my mind. It's safe and effective." And I thought, you haven't
That's
read a
like a
single
horror
thing.
film.
I know.
Oh my
And
God.
you ready for the punchline? That entire doctor's practice is gone. Now, when did GP practices ever close down?
I'll
But
tell
in
you what
my
they're
local
doing.
suburb, gone.
I'll tell you what they're doing in Melbourne. My husband Nick, he rocked up to his old GP. He's not his GP anymore as well, after he jabbed his son against, my husband's wishes. He rocked up with a big binder of all the information, the peer-reviewed studies, the adverse reactions, the ingredients, the dangerous nature of these jabs. And the GP was just sat there terrified, didn't want to see it, didn't actually want to see the information. Now, what's happening with GPs all over Melbourne, I don't know if it's Victoria-wide, but it's Melbourne, is they're swapping. So many people are going in looking for answers as to why either they're sick or their relatives got sick. And of course, there's that heartbreaking video, I think it's in Queensland, looking at the plants, of that guy smashing the car window of a GP that he saw on the road because his wife took the jab, and he said, you jabbed her and now she's lost her life. And he's absolutely incensed. I mean, the poor guy, he's lost everything. What they're doing here is they're swapping surgeries. So the surgeries are staying, they're not shutting down, but we in the East will get GPs from the West and vice versa. Because then when people rock up and say, they can't say, well, you advised me to take it. The GPs then say, oh, well, that was before I was here. So, and they're just absolving themselves of responsibility. And it's not on. It's absolutely not on. And by the way, as well, I know it's probably not in the news headlines, but the UK government, by the way, has just amended the Environmental Protection Act of 1990. This is a huge act, right? And it used to seem like it was protecting the environment, but now they've amended it all very quietly. And the amendments mean that if meat in particular is either genetically modified or has been injected with mRNA or any other kind of gene therapy, that it can be sold and listed as non-GMO. We talk about that 180 thing. That's also, all the information's also on my X account. I mean, it's extraordinary, the stuff that's going on. And Keir Starmer just popped out yesterday as well and said he's going to stem the flow of migrants because he's not happy about the fact that the migrants coming in are not assimilating and they're not learning English. And I thought, how's that for a juxtaposition with Anthony Albanese, who has come out and said all our kids have to learn 6 different languages to communicate with the new migrant children. He's going the opposite way, assimilation not required. And as I said, I think it's because these new migrants then, and their children, I guess, if English is not their first language, they don't really understand what the government's saying to them. So interesting times.
Anything that gives them more power, they will do, and anything that threatens their power, they will turn around. So Starmer has hit a line in the sand and he's got to take a new direction. And here in Australia, well, things are different. We'll get into that in the news briefly because, again, the narratives always weave in. We are 31 minutes into today's show. How about we hit it?
Yes, please. My name is Nicola Charles and I'm a proud anti-vaxxer from Victoria, Australia. Now, I've been worried about vaccines for a long time, but it's not just those clear substances in vials that get injected into people's arms that I'm concerned about. It's vaccines being dropped from the sky as aerosols and vaccines that are added to liquids that we can drink. In 2013, the Australian government administered 1,000 cholera vaccines to recipients in a drink. Who is delivering your water every day, and what is the quality of that water? They've already told us that it contains fluoride, a neurotoxin. 3 years ago, I stopped drinking tap water and recently went onto the Zeta Potential program. This adds alkalinity to the blood and also increases your electrolytes. Something is giving people mass cancers around the world, and jumping onto Zeta Potential for me has been one way for me to alleviate my fears. If you want to jump on the knowledge train with regard to water, click on the link below this show.
All right, so here you go. Here is today's news for Wednesday, the 14th of May. New Liberal leader Susan Ley has warned the Liberal Party it needs to respect modern Australia and reflect modern Australia in her first press conference after securing the top job. Speaking in Canberra after Speaking in Canberra after the defeat of challenger Angus Taylor, Ley has pledged to do things differently as the party confronts look at that, the microphone's gone for a walk, on one of the most devastating defeats in history. With respect to welcome to country, it's simple. If it's meaningful, it matters. If it resonates, then it's in the right place. If it is done in a way that is ticking a box on a Teams meeting, then I don't think it's relevant. We should unite under one Australian flag. That is my firm view, she also said. She was grilled on whether the Liberal Party will now abandon net zero climate change targets or support for nuclear power. She answered, We thought it was settled. Is it settled or not? It is a position that you've mentioned that we have, but there are different views about how we appropriately reduce emissions, she replied. Now
Word
we need
salad.
to exactly. There you go. We've got a new Australian Kamala Harris. Now we need to reduce emissions in this country, and Australia needs to play its part in reducing emissions. That I absolutely sign up to. We also know that if we don't do energy policy well, we can crash the energy grid. Asked, "You're prepared to walk away from net zero?" She snapped back. "You're putting words in my mouth, Andrew," she replied to Nine's Andrew Probyn. Lay has previously backed reforms in the Liberal Party to set targets for female representation of between 40 and 50% of MPs. And then she said, I want to say right here and now we need more women in our party. So this has prompted others out there to call her Turnbull in a skirt. E-scooters could soon become legal to ride on shared pathways and suburban roads in New South Wales after the state government revealed its long-awaited plan to reform the state's road regulation. An inquiry held by the New South Wales Upper House recommended in its final report earlier this year that significant and urgent reform be undertaken in regard to the use of e-bikes, e-scooters and mobility devices in the state. Laws around use of mobility devices are currently somewhat opaque, with the committee having made 34 recommendations, including reducing speed limits to 30 kilometres for all vehicles and allowing them on footpaths. I'd like to see some of those mobility scooters do 30 k's an hour. Meanwhile, New South Wales Roads Minister Jenny Atchison said there were about 1.3 million e-mobility devices already on the New South Wales network, despite it only being legal in the state to buy an e-scooter. Riding one, meanwhile, that has been illegal. You can buy it, but you can't use it. All right, let's get serious now. We're heading over to the US. Sean Combs, the musician who created an empire, also ran a criminal enterprise with the trusted inner circle that committed crime after crime for 20 years, including kidnapping, arson, drug offences, sex crimes, bribery and obstruction, a federal prosecutor said Monday in opening statements. Meanwhile, his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, said she believed she was his girlfriend, but in hindsight, Sean Combs had many girlfriends. Within a year, she said Combs raised the possibility of her having sex with male sex workers while he watched. She called this encounter a freak-off. Sean is a polarizing but charming person. It's hard to decide in that moment what you need when he tells you what he wants. After Bad Boy released just one of her 10 albums, she said organising the now larger freak-off parties with escorts, sex workers, hotels and flights, well, that became her job. At a certain point, I felt like I didn't have a choice, she said about taking part, with Combs allegedly telling her he would leak images of her at the parties online. I would stay up for days on end and have sex with strangers and taking drugs. The longest lasted 4 days, she said. Meanwhile, over in France, French actor Gerard Depardieu has been found guilty of sexually assaulting 2 women by a Paris court. He was convicted of groping the women during filming of the 2021 film Les Volets Verts. His victims were a 54-year-old set dresser and a 34-year-old assistant. The case was seen as a major post-Me Too test in France, reports The Sun. Both women said they'd been scared to speak out at the time and had been intimidated by the actor. Meanwhile, as I mentioned earlier, Tim Tebow got emotional while sharing a map with Sean Ryan showing 111,000 IP addresses that downloaded child of kids under the age of 12 in just the past 30 days. During his sit-down with Ryan, Tebow called on Congress to take action. He said 55 to 85% are also hands-on offenders. And your average offender has 13 victims in their lifetime. 13. Every one of those red dots is a boy or a girl that is suffering on the other end of what they're sharing, downloading, or distributing. Meanwhile, President Trump has entered the US-Saudi Investment Forum commemorating Saudi Arabia's $600 billion commitment to invest in the US. Saudi Arabia has promised billions of dollars in deals with the US, from defense to AI, including $142 billion worth of weapons. Donald Trump has implored Iran to make a deal over the nation's nuclear program, saying it's time to choose. Speaking at the investment forum, Trump vowed that Iran would never have a nuclear weapon. We will never allow America and its allies to be threatened with terrorism or nuclear attack. The choice is theirs to make, he said. Meanwhile, Trump also said his preference will always be for peace and partnership whenever those outcomes can be achieved. It's always going to be that way. Only a fool would think otherwise. He also said, I would never hesitate to wield American power if it's necessary to defend the US or to help defend our allies. There will be no mercy for any foe who tries to do it to us or them harm. If you threaten America or our partners, then you'll be faced with overwhelming strength and devastating force. We have things that you don't even know about. Trump also said that he will be pausing US sanctions on Syria to give them a chance at greatness. The new Syrian president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, is set to travel to Riyadh to meet with Trump tomorrow. Meanwhile, with chatter that Trump will also call for a two-state solution and comments from within the Israeli government that Netanyahu has told his cabinet that they will need to wean off US military support, Netanyahu has now said that Israeli military will enter Gaza with full force in the coming days to destroy Hamas, and there will be no situation where we stop the war. So them's are certainly fighting words. So you've got now Trump and Netanyahu opposed to each other. And this is the first time that we've seen something like that. Saving Israel for last, or will it in fact be the first? Very, very interesting. Also, a federal judge has ruled that alien enemies can now be used to deport, well, the new act can be used to deport Tren de Aragua gang members. The US District Judge Stephanie Haynes made the decision, and she is a Trump-appointed judge. Meanwhile, Tulsi Gabbard says that a Biden-era domestic terrorism policy must end and calls it an abuse of power. Dissent is patriotic. Again, read the headline with Just the News reported last week that a June 2021 domestic terrorism policy memo allowed federal agencies like the FBI and Homeland Security to surveil and question Americans if an agent they believed had been involved in concerning non-criminal behaviour. So Tulsi Gabbard is nullifying that policy. Meanwhile, a rapidly ageing Joe Biden couldn't even recognise George Clooney at a Democratic fundraiser in Los Angeles during the 2024 campaign, leaving the Hollywood star shaken to his core, according to a brand new book, would you believe it, written by Jake Tapper of CNN. The troubling incident, which unfolded at June 13, 2024, star-studded fundraiser co-hosted by Clooney, was laid bare in the book called Original Sin, co-written by Alex Thompson, which chronicles the attempt to cover up Biden's decline while in office. And this was the video that many saw with Barack Obama grabbing Biden by the wrist and guiding him off stage. And that was the event where Clooney said he was not even recognised by Biden, despite having known him for many, many years. And in breaking news, a Wisconsin judge has been indicted on charges that she helped immigrant evade agents. The Wisconsin judge, arrested last month and accused of helping an undocumented immigrant evade federal agents, was indicted by a federal grand jury on Tuesday on charges of concealing a person from arrest and obstructing of proceedings, and that was that Judge Dugan there. So that is a big story as well, or as they like to say in the American in independent media, FAFO. And there's one for you, Nicola.
Oh, I can only dream of judges being arrested and facing grand juries, because who are grand juries? Us. It's
That's
us,
right.
the
That's
people.
right.
I like that. With regard to the Diddy girlfriend, I forget her name.
Cassie Ventura.
Okay, so if we can't get him, if he slips through like they all do, like a slippery snake, all of these charges on the other things, then surely if she has evidence, even a text message, we can have him on blackmail. Because saying that, I'll release, wasn't there a term for that? Was it doxing or something? There's a term for that when you use, because some people, they did they would make pornography of people and then threaten to release it and bribe them and blackmail them. That's against the law in itself. Of
course, it's blackmail.
There's information there. So, she really needs to stand up. I'm a bit concerned that his children left the courtroom, because it might not, I'm just thinking out loud, it might not just be because they didn't like what they heard. Someone needs to make sure those children are okay, is my thinking. A predator is a predator is a predator. That's interesting as well about Trump and Israel. I also wanted to add to the news headlines. It's just a small story, but I think it's important. In South Australia, here, back on Terra Australis for a minute, they've actually banned in South Australia the advertising of ham. And that includes the advertising of ham sandwiches.
Yes, I
Now, I
saw
don't
that.
know
Yeah.
about you. Surely kids going to school, one of the staples is a ham sandwich. You can go in it to any of the Colesworth stores
Mm,
or any of the other stores. Let's advertise them all. IGA, Aldi. There's your free ad for the year. You're not getting any more. But
mm.
you can go into any of these stores and in their so-called deli, I love how they have the fake hams up on the wall and they're made of plastic, like hilarious. Anyway, you can go in and you can buy the hams, right?
Mm.
Shaved ham, sliced ham, whatever. I love it. Australians love it. I would think it's a sandwich staple. Nothing is as good as a toasted cheese and ham sandwich, by the way. And we're going to ban the advertising of ham sandwiches. There's no explanation. They're saying it's for health reasons, but
Yes.
ham salad sandwiches sound pretty healthy to me. And pundits are saying online that it's so that we don't offend new Australians for whom ham is offensive. But if you're telling me, right, I'm going to leave. If you're telling me I can't have pulled pork or bacon, I mean, what's next, Jason?
Well, I also saw that story, and I read somewhere in it that it was saying that the reason that they're saying it's unhealthy is because it's processed meat. And I'm
Oh,
like,
come the hell on.
and if that's the case, then you have to close down 98% of every supermarket in Australia. Anything in a packet,
Fast
anything
food.
in a
Close down the
can,
fast food chains.
close them all down.
Because you can
So in other
advertise a
words,
burger on a poster, but you can't
100%.
advertise a ham sandwich in South Australia.
100%. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Now, on the idea of food, I don't know if I'm getting older or not, but I'm becoming more and more intolerant of certain foods and
Mhm.
processed food, junk food, etc. I just can't tolerate it anymore. Don't like. Not even just the idea I can't digest it, but I can't. I don't appreciate the flavor, the
Mm.
texture, all of that stuff. And obviously, this is part of getting older that your body does do that. But at the same time, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because as your diet changes and as you become more aware of certain foods that you want to not take or consume, you by definition you can't tolerate it. So in other words, when you go on a sugar-free diet, for example, or another interesting one is when you start, and this is going back to my TV home shopping days. We used to sell a probiotic, an organic probiotic drink, and it was you used to have 30 or 50 mils in the bottom of a glass, and it was fabulous. It tasted like sour passiona, but you knew that it was good for you. But the whole idea was that it reduced your sugar cravings. So all of a sudden, you didn't want sugar at all. So you just didn't look for it. What was really interesting was, and I'll never forget it, we then went and we did so we did the show, and I took a couple of sips and whatever and appreciate what it had done. And an hour or two later, I was doing a coffee machine show, and we were making coffees live on air, and of course the guest presenter makes coffees, hundreds of them, and hands them out to everyone. And I'm drinking the coffee, and what I realized was that I had no craving for the sugar that I would normally have put into a coffee, and
You're kidding.
it was almost immediate. It already tasted sweet. That was my point.
That's
So
weird.
so with a good probiotic, all of a sudden you take away your sugar cravings. It triggers you to eat less without having to focus on it. So it was automatically healthy. Now
Mm.
the other thing that I would do if I ever had to take antibiotics, the first thing I did at the end of that was make sure that I dosed up on my probiotic to
Yes.
rebuild the gut health.
That
And I'm
takes
going,
months after antibiotics, by the way.
but
Yeah.
the thing was, with a really good organic probiotic, it was virtually it just felt fantastic almost straight away. So you build and you build and you build. So it's just interesting how you take advantage of these things. But to think that the government or whoever it is in South Australia is saying, "Well, processed ham bad," I mean, you can't be any more hypocritical. And of course, you can
It's
certainly
Australia. It's a ham sandwich. This
exactly.
is
But
like a scene off Seinfeld. I mean, this is
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. I mean,
Is it a joke?
exactly. But meanwhile, the alcohol shops are open. The fast food
Burger
shops are
joints are
open.
open. Burger
Yeah,
joints got posters everywhere. That's fine. Processed burgers, fine. Processed ham with salad, not fine.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Meanwhile, keep the confectionery aisle open, keep them up at the checkouts, keep all the sugary drinks there, keep all the, the potato chips, everything else that's there.
I will betray some more Nicola Charles information today. When my
Mhm.
kids were little and I was asleep and not awake, we used to love going and getting that, the burger treat on the Friday night. We
Mm,
couldn't even make it home. We ate it in the car. It's just so Moorish and yummy,
mm,
we thought.
mm.
And then over time, I noticed the taste was no good, and I started to learn about exactly what fast food was. And I started to have the opinion that it shouldn't actually have the label food, because
Mm.
I don't consider it to be food. I mean, only 15% of all items in supermarkets labeled as food actually have any nutrition. They found that in a study a couple of years ago. 15%. Not the washing liquid aisle, not any of that, not the toilet rolls. I'm talking about the actual stuff that's labeled as food in
Mm.
supermarkets. Only 15% has nutrition. That's why you should go to fruit stores and butchers. But then over time, I stopped having any of it. And then the very last one that I couldn't give up was the chips at Red Rooster. The chicken went off. That tasted almost like pulp, like
Mm.
papier-mâché, like paper. And I'd
Mm.
eat the chicken. I used to get the chicken nuggets, and then afterwards I'd feel like these bits of paper in my
Mm.
mouth, and I'm like, that's not chicken. So I stopped
Yeah.
eating that. And then for a while I would just get the chips because I love their chicken salt. But even they don't taste good anymore. I'm sorry to say, Red Rooster. And so I've been completely off fast food for 5 years, and something happened during that time is my taste buds recovered,
Mm.
and I can really taste food now, like even a lettuce or something that would have been quite bland before is really, really tasty. So I don't know if it's the too much sugar, too much salt that dulls your taste buds, but believe me, you want them back.
Yeah, well, absolutely, absolutely. And the funny thing about food is that when you go fresh and you stop taking food out of a packet, and you've got to go through the fresh food aisles and do it, then you obviously become creative. And I think I mentioned it earlier, with the exception of added fat, added salt, added sugar, if a food looks good, it is good for you. Like if you see something like a fresh piece of fruit, like a watermelon always looks enticing, a cut orange always looks enticing. A fresh salad with plenty of color in it. If it's green and it's red and it's got maybe some pink or some radish or something like that, you just want to dig into it. Although I'm always disappointed with the quality of salad in restaurants, particularly in pubs. I don't know why they
No, I
can't make a
won't tell
decent
you my
salad.
restaurant story. You'd never eat a salad in a restaurant again if I told you a particular salad story. But I will disagree with you slightly on one point as someone who grew up in a farming community. The if it looks good, it is good. Actually, all of these fruits and veggies that have been genetically modified have been done so to look good. So
Of
the
course,
apples
yeah.
are perfect, the potatoes are perfect. Now, if you go to an organic, non-GMO store, if you can find one, and you don't buy those supermarket fruits and veggies, they look terrible. The apples
Mm,
look gnarly, they've got eyes in them, the potatoes have eyes in them, the garlic is smaller, the chilies are smaller, and the mushrooms look gnarly. You're like, oh my god, these are going to poison me like the mushroom poisoner, the
mm,
great mushroom poisoner of Australia. But actually the opposite is true, Jason. If fruit in particular looks crap, gnarly, misshapen, that means it's good. That means it's natural, because that's what food is supposed to be. It's not meant to be perfect. They've genetically modified it to ping in our brain like, whoa, look at that
mm.
pile of perfect apples. And it's like the tomatoes in supermarkets. That's why I grow my own. They just taste of water. They don't taste of tomato.
Yeah, good point. It is a good point. Well, we go to a farm on the Central Coast that is effectively organic without having the label, and it's just exactly as you've described it. And not only that, it's half the price of the
Yeah.
supermarket, which is
Isn't it
always.
amazing? The more natural, the cheaper it gets.
And the other interesting thing is that when you go to the supermarket, and for example, if we buy cucumbers, 3 days and they've had it. We go to the farm, and 3 weeks and they're still sitting in the fridge and they're perfect.
That's the logistics. It's the same with flowers. It's why if you buy flowers at the supermarket in the plastic or at the gas station, they've had such a look, because I have a friend who has a flower shop. They've had such a long journey to get to there, and they're at their last looking great, and then you buy them and a couple of days later you don't have any flowers, which is really sad if you're buying buying them for a friend or a funeral or a wedding or whatever. But if you go to one of these, I wouldn't exactly call them organic, but a more natural local flower shop, they get them straight from the flower farms, bring them into the shop, and they don't, they don't last for sale because people buy them within a couple of days. And again, they last for 2 or 3 weeks. So that's how you buy flowers.
Yeah, there you go. Good advice. It's interesting, isn't it? It's always very encouraging, and there's always a new way to do something, and whatever that new way is, if it just changes the way that you eat better, just a step at a time, it makes all the difference in the world. It's like when you decide that you want to take off a couple of kilos, and you get focused. All the time. Today again.
Every day. Every single day.
There it is. But whatever I can do to sort of make a difference. Well, I think I told you I did the Lance Armstrong diet some 10, maybe, was it 10? Yeah, about 10 years ago now. The Lance Armstrong diet is called weight loss surgery, everyone. Which was, that's why I call it that. It's called cheating, but it worked for me.
Are you going to tell people about that? Because I only learned this a few days ago, and it's very interesting, Jason.
Yeah, well, look, see, so about 10 years ago, sort of early 40s, I just realized that I was a bit heavier than I'd ever been before. I wasn't like super heavy, but I was, around about 118 kilos or something like that. And I was a bit disappointed that I'd got to that stage, but I'd realized that, a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. We'd had multiple deaths in the family, and it was just hard. And I'd been to the doctor, and my blood sugar had gone over the threshold for diabetes type 2 and sleep apnea or snoring, and cholesterol's no good, all the stuff that you get in your 40s, the great big warnings. So my doctor sent me over to endocrinologist, who put me on this 800 calorie a day diet. And I laughed. I said, Doc, when I was 20, I was a chance, but now with multiple kids and stresses, I can't do this. He said, well, you got to try. He said, come back in 12 months. So I went back in 12 months. I hadn't lost any weight and just done whatever, and was managing my, my blood sugar with metformin, the diabetes drug, and I didn't want to be on it. And I have to do the blood sugar tests every day, all that horrible stuff. And it was managed. It was okay. My father had diabetes, and he died from esophageal cancer, which they said was a result of diabetes. And so that's why I was making a move. So Dad died at 63. I'm right at 43, 44, something like that at the time. So I went back to the endocrinologist and I said, look, can I just go to the surgeon? He said, yep, it's been 12 months. We'll send you over to the surgeon. Pardon me. And I went over and saw this bariatric surgeon. I walked in there and he said, what are you here for? I said, well, I need to solve this problem. Look at me. And, he said, well, okay, here's how it works. We do this operation. You'll lose 30 kilos in 6 months and you'll add 20 years to your life. He said, I've done 1,000 of these surgeries and I've never had one leak yet. That's the problem, is if you have the surgery, we cut your stomach down and whatever. And if it breaks, or if it's not sealed properly and it leaks, that's dangerous. But he said, out of 1,000, not one. So
is the other part of your stomach gone, or is it just closed off?
No, it's gone. So there's a couple of different surgeries. You can have a lap band where they take the thing and they put an elastic band and they squeeze it, but that stretches over time, so you've got to constantly do it. He said, I won't do those surgeries. And if they fail, we then have to do this thing called a bypass. I don't do any of that. I only do the gastric sleeve. So he said, your stomach is literally the size of a soft drink bottle, around 1.2 liters. We're going to cut that down to 180 mils.
Oh my God, Jason.
So
you do still get to enjoy food, right?
Yes. And so what he explained was that over time it will expand back to about double that size, so around about the size of a can of, drink, 375 mils. So he said, for the first 6 months, you'll only be able to eat what you can fit into the size of your hand. Think literally the size of an egg. So for the first 6 months, it was difficult, and if you eat too much, it literally wants to come back. So it's quite complicated. Now, they have dietitians, they have counselors, psychologists, etc. Now, going through that whole process, no one ever explained to me that part of the reason why you put on the weight is you're a comfort eater. We eat for comfort.
Aren't we all?
Exactly. Well, my whole family are comfort eaters. I'm
a comfort eater. I'll probably comfort eat after the show.
Exactly. And the reason we comfort eat is it's partly, it's partly masking, your mental health, if you will, because you do that as a distraction.
There's that famous clip of Princess Diana, Jason, and she said she was bulimic because the pain in her stomach felt like arms wrapped around her. It broke my heart.
Unbelievable, right there.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. So what happened was I lost 30 kilos in 4 months, looked fantastic, new wardrobe, everything was great. But underneath, I couldn't comfort eat. And so I felt that my mental health wasn't as good as it was. But my breakthrough, how I got over it, was I literally one day got up, walked into the kitchen, because imagine if you can't eat, you don't bother about preparing food. You literally pick up an egg and hard-boiled egg, you eat, you're done. I went
Oh
into the kitchen.
God.
I went into the kitchen, opened up the fridge. There was, beautiful fresh fruit and veg like we always shopped anyway. And I laid it all out and I thought, I'm going to cook something today. And I even cracked open a beer, had a sip and started chopping and cutting and preparing whatever. And I prepared this beautiful meal and the smells and the tastes, and you have a little bit of a taste here and there. So by the time I sat down for dinner, I didn't want to eat anyway because I was already full. But it didn't matter. I watched my family consume this meal and like, Dad, this is so good.
That's
And
why I
everyone,
cook. That's why I cook. Yeah.
Exactly. And that was my cure. So from that point onwards, I became a really good cook. Like I was already pretty good, but I became really good to the point where I actually got offered a job and worked in a kitchen for six
Yeah, you
months in
mentioned that
between
before.
COVID.
So I'll tell you what's beautiful about that, Jason, is that you were comforting yourself with food, and we're all guilty. You're not on your
Mm,
own. I do it
mm.
too. And it kind of 180'd it, and now you're love, because I love people with food as well. You're passing on that comfort and love with food to other people. So it is kind of beautiful. I would normally not advocate for anyone to have any surgery of any description, but it sounds like that's something you needed to do. Wow. I can't believe, I feel bad because the portions in my house with Greeks around are absolutely huge.
Well, the best part is I'll never forget it. We went to a restaurant, one of the steakhouses, and of course I couldn't eat anything at the time. And I ordered the entree, which was like chili con carne entree size, and it was a tiny little bowl, and it cost $6 because it was an
Oh,
entree back, 10 years ago. $6 was what you might have paid today. It's probably $26 for an entree.
yeah.
I took half of it home in a packet because I knew it was another
Oh,
meal. Could you believe it?
Jason.
But and that was the point. So what happened was we could now upgrade where we went for dinner because I was eating less. What we would do is we would go out. I would order an entree. My wife would order the main, and we could share them. And so our restaurant bills halved, which was
Wow.
fantastic. So then we could upgrade where we went. So we were going to a lot better restaurants than we ever did before because we could afford to.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
so again, as I used to say, and will always say, it's going to be my headstone. Always use your weakness as your strength. You can't
Mm.
eat better, and that's what we did. And so yeah, love it. Absolutely love the fact. Sometimes when you're eating something really nice and you wish you could have a little bit more, well, so be it. But I remember the surgeon saying to me, he said, where you used to go to the steakhouse and want to eat a 1 kilo tomahawk or a big fat rump or something like that, he says now you'll order the filet mignon, 2 bites and you're done and you're
Mm.
satisfied. I go, okay, that suits me. So
I
there it
think
is.
what most people don't realize as well, and I looked at it a little bit as a person who also wanted to lose weight, I was modeling and an actress, is that the food that you eat in your mouth doesn't really register in your stomach and the brain for 20 minutes.
Mm,
So part way through eating, you have eaten enough to be full, but it just hasn't registered in your brain yet.
yes,
So
guilty.
I saw Cindy Crawford interviewed once when I was a model. We had the same agent, and I saw her interviewed, and they said, "How did you do it? How did you do it?" Because they're quite tall, the old supermodels. So they're actually meant to be, like super soldiers. They're meant to be bigger than they were. And she said she just did what you did. She changed the serving size, the plate. So she went from a dinner plate to a side plate, and she had
Yes.
all the same food she would have had, only a side plate size, and she lost all the weight because she said she wasn't prepared to give anything up. There are loads of things I'm not prepared to give up, including
Well,
wine. But I'd be too scared. I'd be too scared that I'd have the surgery and then greed out one day and sort of burst a blood vessel or something.
Well, you know what? And without trying to be too crude on it, but literally, if you eat too much with this, it just wants to come straight back out, and it's instant relief.
You're
So,
like a supermodel, Jason.
well, you know what? As a young man growing up, there was nothing worse than having to do that. Like wanting to vomit was just the worst thing in the world. Now it's nothing. It's completely different experience. I don't want to give up to be too graphic, but it's not a thing. You
No.
just manage it, and that's just the
Well,
way it
you
is.
seem pretty happy with it and you're looking good, as in the sense you're looking normal. I don't like people to get too skinny. I'm not a fan of that. I
Well,
like people
yeah,
to look strong.
Very, very good point. I'll never forget reading, I think I also mentioned it, Gene Wilder's book, and Mel Brooks told him when he got sick, he said, make sure you keep the weight on. There's nothing worse than a scrawny old man. You want to keep a bit of weight. So yeah, this is a good balance for me. This was, I'm fitting into clothes. That jacket I wore the other day, I bought 30 years ago when I was skinny. It still fits me. I can't do better than that. That's a perfect outcome.
I have those clothes and those stories. How come this doesn't fit, Mum? Because I got it 30 years ago when I was skinny, because now my daughters are the size I was 30 years ago, so they're getting all the clothes. But it's interesting, isn't it, the phases that you go through. Well, thank you for sharing that story, Jason. Amazing. What would you like to say before we go?
Well, I think in the last 2 days, the daily Australian radio shows turned a corner. And I think what it is we're opening up a lot more to our audience. We're still providing news and analysis, but I feel like that we're now becoming the radio show that we intended to become when we first started. I think we've taken a step back from trying to be too serious. I think that the audience likes the show because of who we are as much as what we say. And I'm hoping that you will be able to respond, audience, to say that, yes, that's what you want more of, because I now feel that this show on every measure, apart from me stuttering during the news, is as good as anything that you'll get anywhere in Australia. And I'm intending, as long as Nicola and I can keep doing this, that one day you'll turn around and go, we were watching you when you had 1,000 viewers, because this show is as good enough to have 1 million viewers.
Yeah. We were watching you when you were a little tiddler, and now you're a great big shark. We won't forget our early viewers, that I can tell you. And I really do appreciate the comments. And when I was having a wobble yesterday, it was interesting you say that about liking us as people. Lots of the comments that were quite long form that were coming through to me were more talking about our personal experiences and opinions, while we're still allowed to have opinions in Australia, than about, the news stories and the news headlines. They weren't commenting on Trump or anything like that. They were commenting on how we feel about things. So keep that coming. You might actually have inadvertently kept the show going. But thank you again for watching The Daily Australian. Myself, Nicola Charles, and my co-host and co-producer, Jason Olbourne, we will be doing this all over again tomorrow. My name is Nicola Charles, and I'm a proud anti-vaxxer from Victoria, Australia. Now, I've been worried about vaccines for a long time, but it's not just those clear substances in vials that get injected into people's arms that I'm concerned about. It's vaccines being dropped from the sky as aerosols, and vaccines that are added to liquids that we can drink. In 2013, the Australian government administered 1,000 cholera vaccines to recipients in a drink. Who is delivering your water every day, and what is the quality of that water? They've already told us that it contains fluoride, a neurotoxin. 3 years ago, I stopped drinking tap water and recently went onto the Zeta Potential program. This adds alkalinity to the blood and also increases your electrolytes. Something is giving people mass cancers around the world, and jumping onto Zeta Potential for me has been one way for me to alleviate my fears. If you want to jump on the knowledge train with regard to water, click on the link below this show.